Good morning, everyone. I will call to order the regular meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee. Today is January 21st, 2016. I'm Lisa Bender. I chair the committee. We have a quorum that includes Council Members Reich, Goodman, Andrew Johnson, and Council President Johnson. Council Member Warsami is absent because he just had a little baby girl. So congratulations to Council Member Warsami and his family. We have 5 items on our agenda today. The first 2 are public hearings. And then I'll move through the consent agenda first, and then return back to the public hearings. So starting with item number 3, this is a rezoning application for 1844 Central Avenue Northeast. Item number 4 is an alley vacation at 4801 France Avenue South to vacate a portion of an alley at a Lutheran church there on France Avenue. And item number 5 is referring to staff and ordinance amending the zoning code relating to regulations for inclusionary zoning. And that work is just beginning. This just would give staff the go-ahead to start working on potential policy changes. So I believe we may have a motion to pull item number 3. So Councilmember Reich, is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair. Please pull number 3.
So we'll move item number 3 to discussion. We'll return to that after the public hearing items. So I will move items 4 and 5 for approval. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And those 2 items carry. So then returning to the public hearings, I'm actually going to take up item number 2 first, just since we have our Zoning Board of Adjustment folks here. So item number 2 is to approve council reappointments for 3 returning Zoning Board of Adjustment members for terms beginning January 1st, 2016 and ending December 31st, 2018. We have 3 excellent commissioners who are returning, thankfully, and so each of them is here, and we'd be happy to hear from you if you would like. So that's Amy Thompson, Eric Johansson, and Dick Sandberg. And so thank you for your service. I'm happy to open the public hearing if you'd like to say anything. Okay, seeing no interest in speaking, I will close the public hearing. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's really gracious of you to actually open the public hearing and have people talk about these folks. I only know one of them really well, so since he's not going to get up and say anything about himself, I just want to thank Dick Sandberg for your service and for agreeing to continue to participate. When we have this high, I'm sure all of you are fabulous, but I just know that from knowing Dick as my neighbor and knowing him as a CLPC board member and knowing him as a community activist, a neighborhood activist, and a Board of Adjustment member, we could not get someone better to serve on this panel. I think you and the others bring incredible credibility to our process. And the truth of the matter is I've served on zoning and planning for 18 years and we see less and less appeals, which means someone at those levels, the staff first, then the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission are getting it right. And that's how we know. It's a measurement, really. If people were thinking you weren't getting it right, we would have many, many more appeals. And so I think it's amazing that citizens who sometimes don't even have a background in planning, they weren't trained at the Humphrey Institute like our wonderful staff or other really great schools of planning, have learned this process and have represented the city so well. So I'm just ecstatic that Dick Sandberg has agreed to continue on in this capacity, and I assume, I just make the assumption, I don't know the other 2 of you, but if you are anywhere near as good as he is, we are extremely well served, and the fact that you're here today for something that isn't even controversial says something about your commitment to the city, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodman. I would add my thanks to each of you. We actually did interviews for all of the returning members, just to give an opportunity to chat with myself and staff who staffs the zoning board. And I was just so impressed with each of you. We also had other candidates that we couldn't appoint. So it's just, we're lucky to have so much interest in a board that probably is a little bit unsung, who deals with some of the really important details of variances in people's yards, and but has also helped inform our policy changes over time, especially where we're seeing a lot of new interest in residential development in our lower density single family areas. The work that you're doing really has informed policy change. So we're lucky to have each of you. Ms. Thompson brings a wealth of knowledge about the environment and a real passion for, making sure that development, large and small, really protects our shoreland, mitigates erosion. Mr. Johansson is the only architect, I think, on the zoning board right now. So his skills, I know, have been really appreciated by staff and his fellow zoning board members. So our zoning board puts in an enormous amount of time. So we thank you very much for your service, and I will move to reappoint our 3 zoning board candidates. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you again for coming today. Now we'll go to item number 1 and begin with staff.
The item before you in item number 1 is an appeal that was submitted by Mount Olivet Careview Home regarding the denial of a side yard setback variance for an addition to their property at 5517 Lindale Avenue South. The existing facility is a skilled care facility with 153 beds. Of those, 137 are long-term beds and 16 are transitional care beds. The applicant submitted an application to the Planning Commission back in December for an addition on the back side of the building. So this is their site here outlined. It fronts along Lindale, also along 55th and 56th, and it has a little bit of frontage along Garfield Avenue on the east side. I am holding the, we'll see if this works. There we go. So the addition that you're seeing here, this is on the back side of the building. I can give you a little more context as we zoom out, but the item that's before you on appeal relates to this side yard setback in this location adjacent to the residential structure along Garfield Avenue South. The Planning Commission denied a variance to allow that setback to be reduced from 13 feet to 6 feet for a 5-story addition. The addition is about 36,000 square feet and would allow them to have more single beds, so they're not actually increasing the amount of people that they serve on site, but they're changing some double rooms to single rooms and then also adding some additional space for activities and mechanical equipment and that sort of thing. So the Planning Commission upheld staff recommendation to deny that variance. Again, the request was to go from 13 feet to 6. Staff found that practical difficulties do not exist in complying with the setback requirements in this location and that there are no unique circumstances to justify the request. This is a site that's over 2 acres in size and has received numerous additions over time since they were established, I think, back in the 1960s in this location. The subject property is large enough to accommodate the additional square footage in a manner that would keep it off of that interior side yard setback. I'll go here to, I'll go back, well, actually, let's go here. So you can see the single family homes that front along Garfield. This single family home that's immediately adjacent to the Mount Olivet property is actually under common ownership with Mount Olivet. That was formerly used as a child care center by Mount Olivet, but I believe it is actually now rented out as a single family home. Regardless of ownership, we can't guarantee that that house will be owned by Mount Olivet forever. They have volunteered to even put a deed restriction on the property saying that they would maintain ownership of it forever, but that's actually not something that we can regulate. So the staff concern here is really about the impact both to that home and to the other single family homes to the south and west, or south and east of the property. The 2 properties, again, currently under common ownership, but you can see how close that single family home is to the lot line to the north. The parking lot that's shown here on the east side of the building is going to be modified slightly, but there really isn't much of a transition here. So the setback requirements in the zoning code are really intended to maintain access to light and air for adjacent properties and to allow for an adequate separation between uses. Staff found that the proposed setback here at 6 feet doesn't allow for either one of those things. So the impact on light and air here could be significant with that 5-story addition that close to the property line. And there's really no transitional space left over to provide that. That's actually a specific development standard that's called out for board and care facilities, is that there be an adequate transition space between this type of use and uses of a smaller scale. Let's see. The portion of the site where the addition is basically allowing that addition right now. This is a single-story connection between the 2 under current conditions. So the 5-story addition is an infill that goes over that single-story piece, but also extends quite a bit further back to the east. There are a few pieces of correspondence in your packets from neighbors who have said they actually do support the variance. That support references an option B that Mount Olivet has presented. They presented that at the Planning Commission meeting, and I unfortunately don't have a copy of that, but I'm sure they have it with them today. Basically, a lot of the correspondence from the neighbors say if they have to choose between the setback variance that you're seeing here, or option B, which was a larger footprint, that they would prefer option B. I just want to clarify, if this setback variance is denied, that does not mean that they get to build option B. Option B would require a new set of land use applications and a new public hearing before the Planning Commission. I don't know exactly what those applications would be. It would get rid of the side yard setback, but it's possible that there would be other applications required as part of that. So I'll close there and I can answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? There are none, so we will open the public hearing and begin with the applicant, please.
I would like, Dave Walterstorff with WAI Continuum. We're the architects, and I'm the lead architect with the office. What we wanted to show you was the example of option A and option B on the site. What we're seeing right now is option A, and option B lengthens. So in addition to what's required, we are, have heavy restrictions by the health department, the state, to have a certain number of square footage, a certain number of things in each application to them. And these are both based on that. And so the option A and option B work. Option A is a smaller footprint toward, as you can see, the building moves quite dramatically by 15 feet toward Garfield. So the area right in here is longer than it was here on this option. I think I can put them both up there. So you can kind of see that there is a difference in those lengths. So what we're talking about is the difference going this way, the side.
Sir, can you flip this bottom image? I think they're not arranged the same.
Do something like that?
Just
Oh,
so
flip
we
it
can
over?
compare the
Oh,
footprint
sure, I'm
more
sorry.
sort of apples to apples, if you know what I mean. There, yeah. Oh, no.
Oh, opposite, I'm sorry. I didn't want to cover up the other one,
No, I
but
see, but it's a little
um,
hard to compare them if they're mirror
so you can
images.
see there is a bit of a difference in the length, and it's 15 feet is the difference between those two in length toward Garfield. It also makes the garbage more difficult to pick up, and it is possible. It just takes more maneuvering. It takes 2 more times to maneuver, and we have to face it in the direction toward Garfield. So those 2 elements alone, and the openness, the feel of the whole project, we actually, as the architects, prefer option A over B only because it fits into the bigness, the size of Garfield. It fits the city much better. And I can show you examples of that as well. So here is the option A. I think I'll go this way so we can see which side it's on. And here is option B. And so as it projects toward Garfield, it lengthens, it makes the building bigger. And this puts it back in and just blends it in with the project better, we think. So and those 2 things are the reason for the community responding that they would like now to, to approve option A, which is the wider or the appeal for the variance. They would like to have it now. And they didn't express that need at the other council meeting. Any questions?
I don't see any questions.
Okay.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak on this item? Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Oh, that's okay. So I guess we'll reopen the public hearing officially.
I'm sorry
No,
about
it's
that.
fine.
I
So,
apologize.
that's right. Please state your name and
My
address
name is
for the
Michael
record.
Graham, and I live on Garfield. I'm actually here representing myself, Jim Stoltz, Karen Graham, Angie Hollis, Angie Megan Cox, Matt Oblink, and Courtney Belong. If I can say Belong again. Can't say your name. Sorry. What they kind of presented here was great. We just kind of saw the B option recently as well, and we originally kind of fought the A option because we didn't want the building built at all. But given the fact that Plan B probably most likely, no offense, will be approved by the Planning Commission because it's on their property, and I think it satisfies all setback by requirements and stuff, and also the fact that the Planning Commission already has approved the variance or the height variance. So I don't think that's going to be a hurdle that they have to kind of go over again. So we're here I'm here on behalf of the neighborhood, just kind of say, we would prefer that Plan B option, or Plan A option, which was to go into the side variance. Matt, who is actually an architect, wrote some interesting things about this. While approving the variance to reduce the side setback will allow Mount to be closer to the property line, it will allow them to keep the building further from the existing house that is adjacent to the south. So if you look at the example, I don't know if the architect could have pointed that out, that by building the property closer to Garfield, you're actually building it closer to the resident's house that they're trying to avoid the variance on. So from that standpoint, it makes sense to keep the building back behind that residence instead of building it next to the residence. From my standpoint, there seems to be no question that a building will be built. Although many neighbors will be impacted by this project, my house is actually directly across from the building site. I will be greatly impacted by the obstruction of view, increased shadowing, increased noise and traffic as delivery trucks attempt to maneuver the street in front of my house into the new loading zone. The invasion of privacy as privacy as the new building would look directly into my front yard. I do believe that allowing the side setback allowance would make the building set back further than the property back from Garfield would be best. Any questions of me?
Thank you. I don't see any. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Let's see if there's anyone else who would like to speak. Otherwise, I will go ahead and move to approve the application to approve the variance for the side yard setback. I know there's been a lot of discussion with the immediate neighbors. I hear staff's analysis, and I thank you for the careful work. But I do think we will also direct staff to prepare findings to support the variance application. I think the applicant made some good arguments related to the three standards that must be met for a variance to be granted. And given the support of the neighbors for this option, I think it's very reasonable to approve the variance. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you for coming today. We have then the last item, which was item 3, pulled from consent. This is a rezoning at 1844 Central Avenue Northeast. If staff would give a brief presentation, that would be helpful.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. CPED and the Planning Commission recommended approval of this rezoning request to go from C1 to C2 for 1844 Central Avenue Northeast. The reason the applicant requested the rezoning request was to allow a commercial tenant to sell tobacco. And that requirement for C2 zoning or greater for tobacco sales has been in place since 2008. The subject property is located along the Central Avenue, or the Northern Central Avenue commercial corridor. It has a mix of C1 and C2 zoning. The existing building, 2-story mixed-use building with commercial establishments on the first floor and residential units on the floor above. In the back of the lot, there's an auto garage that's been there since the 1950s and a 19-space surface parking lot. No changes are proposed for the building or the site as part of the rezoning application. Staff did see that the rezoning request did meet the findings that are required. And just a summary of that review, the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan supports allowing more intensive commercial uses on commercial corridors. That comes with C2 zoning, allowing greater sized retail establishments, and it does allow more permissive of auto-related uses. The Central Avenue commercial corridor extends from, the northern portion of it extends from 18th Avenue to 31st Avenue. So this is just a block north of the southern extent. Also found that the rezoning request is consistent with the Central Avenue Small Area Plan built form and land use recommendations. This plan states that for this area from 18th Avenue to 31st Avenue, that there will be, they will consider that the plan will consider rezoning from up to C2 or C3A, and highlighted 3 other elements that we saw applicable to this rezoning request. That it will broaden the mix of retail and businesses along the avenue by supporting existing and new entrepreneurs that offer unique products and services, providing larger retail space for regional and national businesses that appeal to a broad cross-section of Northeast, and recruit businesses that serve the day-to-day needs of the local Northeast market. Just 2 other points we want to make. The rezoning may be primarily in the interest, we see that, of the property owner. However, we feel that the rezoning would support the small area plan built form and land use recommendations that I just previously mentioned. And then finally, the zoning classification of the property within general area that they're requesting, C2, is compatible with the proposed zoning classification. More than half of the parcels within this map area are C2. And it's the corner of 19th and Central that is the sole C1 zoning classification. The one public comment has been received, a letter from the neighborhood not supporting the conditional use permit. That is not part of this application or this project. It's can explain that if you have questions about it, but what we're talking about now and what the project that is before you and the decision before you is the rezoning from C1 to C2. So be happy to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Just to clarify, the application for rezoning is related to the use of the building,
Yes.
the existing building, to allow for a new use, which would be tobacco sales.
Correct.
So it's not related to an application for redeveloping the site.
No,
Okay.
no.
Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reich? Or is there any other questions? Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, I think the community group doesn't want tobacco sales, so they went for the use application more than the underlying zoning, but they are interrelated. You wouldn't have one consideration without the other. And I can appreciate how one can, derive a legitimate approval process for an upzoning, but in the spirit that this is a legislative decision, we're not compelled to, particularly as you've noted that it's the sole interest of an individual party for a sole purpose of one sale. This isn't for redeveloping Central Avenue. This isn't for trying to create a Main Street sort of character. This is for one purpose and one purpose only. And as the chair noted, not for redevelopment or expanded retail uses or mix whatsoever. Furthermore, there's no hardship. This property has enjoyed commercial activity for probably around 100 years now with the current zoning. It's not consistent with what most people would consider the character, the Main Street character, as defined by many other community group plans, and was sort of the intent of the last plan, but that C2 thing was part of another sort of interest, and that's why consider was the compromise word. Consider, not compelled to accommodate. I would also say that one of the reasons why many community people have felt that the C1, C2 mix, which it's almost equal, you might say there's maybe 1 or 2 more C2, I would say it's a consistent patchwork, is that it protects the Main Street character, particularly around auto-related uses. When you have contiguous stretch of C2, you now opened up to a much more intense set of uses that would not otherwise be allowed, and which certainly be inconsistent with the Main Street pedestrian character of that area, and is also inconsistent with our policy 17, which is a citywide policy to not encourage new auto-related uses, which this would potentially allow. It's interesting you note the garage in the back. The garage in back has been operating illegally on and off for the last several years as an illegal operation. And so I don't even know why you mentioned that. But it is interesting that these are the very auto-related uses that we're trying to not have be part of our Main Street commercial character of this area. Furthermore, because it is, this is not my main set of interests, but it certainly has been an interest of the city to, since 2008, to not have cigarette sales at corner stores. This is for all purposes a corner store. Throughout the city, we have shut these problem properties down for that very reason. Again, not my big thing. I'm more libertarian on these issues, but certainly is something that the city has consistently applied in other areas for the health reasons that have been noted. Also, I would say that we always have caution when we upzone. We cannot guarantee the future uses. We have a use before us. We might like it, we might not like it, but there's always that consideration that we will be more liberal with uses that we cannot control. And this is important when we consider that within a few months, we will have a new comprehensive plan. And believe me, the nature and character of Central Avenue, Main Street, downtown Northeast is going to be a key feature of my community's consideration for our comp plan. We are now interjecting ourselves for no real good reason and not compelled to do so. Yet here we are with this decision before us. And so with that, I would really encourage my colleagues to deny.
Thank you, Councilmember Reich. I'll take that as a motion to deny the application to rezone this property. I'll see if there's any other comments. I would just like to state that, well before this, I've had the chance to hear Councilmember Reich talk about the planning efforts that he was very involved in on Central Avenue. And if you want to hear Councilmember Reich get really excited about something, you could, that's one of the topics. And I know how much effort went into that planning effort by the council member and his office and the community, with really careful detail to the desired places where there were a desire for redevelopment and change, and the places where the community really felt like they wanted to preserve what was there. And so I think to go in and rezone piece by piece in a way that's, inconsistent with all of that effort, I think is inappropriate. So I'm supportive of Councilmember Reich's motion. See if there's any other discussion. Seeing none on approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that carries. That's our final agenda item, and
Madam
we.
Chair, just,
pardon me.
could I just ask if the committee would be inclined to direct staff to do findings for that,
Yes,
since
thank
it's
you.
contrary to the staff recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. And so along with Councilmember Reich's motion, I will move to direct staff to prepare findings in support of denial of the variance. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. That carries. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.